Section 5.5, Rationalizing Denominators. Objective 1, rationalize the denominator. When you input the square root of 2 into a calculator, the answer goes on forever. Numbers that go on forever are called irrational. We know in expressions and equations the denominator can never be irrational, so we rationalize the denominator. So when you rationalize a denominator and it's a monomial, you multiply it. When it's a monomial, you multiply the fraction by the denominator. So for our first one, we are going to multiply our fraction by our denominator. So square root of 2 over the square root of 2. Now what that does is it cancels out the radical in the bottom. Because 2 times 2 is 4 and the square root of 4 is 2. So anytime you're multiplying the same radicals together, the radical just cancels out. Now we have 3 times 2, which is the square root of 6. If you can, simplify, but in this case, we cannot. Alright, moving on. We're going to multiply our next fraction by square root of 45x. What that does is cancels out the fraction, or excuse me, the radical. So we have 45x over the square root of 90x. We can simplify the square root of 90x into 9 times 10x over 45x. And then we can continue simplifying, taking the 3 out of the 9. So we have 3 times the square root of 10x over 45x. Now we can take this one step further because 45 and 16, or excuse me, 45 and 3 have 3 in common. And so we're left with 10x over 15x. Alright, next we have the cube root. Still doesn't change what we're going to do. We're going to multiply by the cube root of 25. So we're left with the cube root, excuse me, that goes away. We're left with 25 on the bottom and the cube root of 50. Can't simplify that, so we're done. Last one for monomial. We're going to multiply by the denominator. So we have the square root of 21xy over 3y. Alright, objective 2, conjugate. The conjugate uses the same terms, just change the sign in the middle. So when you have a binomial, that's two terms, you need to use the conjugate. So the conjugate, again, is the same thing, just change the sign in the middle. Now I'm going to teach you a trick. The bottom, you don't need to FOIL. The bottom, all you need to do is square both and put a minus. So 2 squared is 4, and the square root of 7 squared is 7. When you square a square root, the square root goes away. The top, we need to distribute the 3. So we have 3 times 2 is 6, minus 3 times the square root of 7. We're going to continue simplifying. So we have 6 minus 3 times the square root of 7 over negative 3. Now we can simplify more because they all have a 3 in common. So we're going to take a 3 out of everything. So we're left with 2 minus, you could put the 1 there if you want, square root of 7 over negative 1. And remember, if we divide by a negative 1, all that does is changes the signs on top. Alright, part B. We're going to multiply by the conjugate in, which is 2 minus the square root of 3. So 2 minus the square root of 3. So the bottom, we're just going to put a minus and square both. So square root of 2 squared is 2. The square root of 3 squared is 3. And on top, we actually have to FOIL this. Take it slow through here. So we have 3 times the square root of 2 is square root of 6. 3 times the negative square root of 3 is negative 3. 2 times the square root of 2 is 2 square root of 2. And then 2 times the negative square root of 3 is negative 2 square root of 3. Now we can't combine anything on the top because none of the radicals are the same and there's no just numbers there. So the bottom we can simplify. So we have negative 6 minus 3 plus 2 times the square root of 2 minus 2 times the square root of 3 over negative 1. So anytime we have that negative 1 on the bottom, just change the signs on top. So we have 6 plus 3 minus 2 times the square root of 2 plus 2 times the square root of 3. Alright, part C, we're going to multiply by the conjugate again. So we have square root of 5 plus square root of 6. So at the bottom, put a minus, square both, so 5 and 6. And on top, we need to FOIL. So 6 times the square root of 5 is square root of 30. 6 times the square root of 6 is 6. 1 times the square root of 5 is square root of 5. And then 1 times the square root of 6 is square root of 6. Can't simplify anything on the top. So we have square root of 30 plus 6 plus square root of 5 plus square root of 6 over negative 1, and we're going to change the signs. So we have negative square root of 30 minus 6 minus square root of 5 minus square root of 6. It doesn't matter which order that's in, so the 30 can be last, the 5 can be first, as long as the signs go with it.